Thank you very much, Ms. Cueto. Your work in breaking down barriers for women in politics and in the private sector has been remarkable and really impressive. So well done. Congratulations. Now, to a trailblazer in the world of Mexican culinary arts and much more. Pati Jinich, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Pati Jinich is an accomplished James Beard Award-winning host of the PBS TV series Pati's Mexican Table. She started her career as a political analyst. Can you believe it? Then she switched to sharing her passion on Mexico's cuisine. Jinich is a resident chef of the Mexican Cultural Institute in Washington, D.C., and author of 2 cookbooks. She has cooked at the White House on multiple occasions and was named by the Council of the Americas as one of the top 5 ambassadors working toward uniting the United States and Mexico. Let's give her a warm round of applause to welcome Pati Jinich.
Thank you so much. Many times overlooked, the power of poems may seem too subtle on the surface. As some may say, poetry is just an art form. However, the power of poems and the poets who write them can be and has been deeply impactful, engraving long-lasting messages in the minds of generations, paving the way for brighter paths for nations, especially in difficult times where there seems to be little or no hope. Poems become even more powerful because their power can be so unexpected. In a similar way as the kitchen, poetry is one of the most noble of spaces. Just like the kitchen, poetry creates a space where people of contrasting opinions and from opposing factions can unknowingly and inexplicably see eye to eye. As a Mexican Jewish immigrant woman chef, I try to do it with tacos. As a Cuban, Spanish American, brilliant immigrant poet, Richard Blanco does it more beautifully with poems. Poems that can feed the mind, yet touch a deeper place by going beyond what seems obvious and concrete, leading to higher ways of understanding. Mr. Blanco and I share the immigrant experience in the US, this experience of cultures clashing and borders blending within. This experience produces something very rich and unique. It creates contributions that don't belong to one place or another, but to a universal and overlapping human dimension. Just like cooking, poetry unlocks a freedom of speech and expression beyond what media, press, political analysis, or any conversation are capable of doing. Poetry offers a unique license to touch on themes that may have become too politicized, too tender, too raw, too difficult. Poetry opens doors where there seems to be none. It is my honor to introduce Mr. Blanco, a poet whose work has continuously opened doors when hope rides high and when hope rides low. President Obama chose Mr. Blanco as the 5th inaugural poet in the US history, the youngest, the first Latino, immigrant, and gay, and handsome person to serve in such a role. Around that time, Mr. Blanco stated that while preparing the poem for President Obama's inauguration, he was trying hard to step away from basing his work on his autobiography. Yet, he comes back to it again and again because it seems that Mr. Blanco is, at the core, himself a poem, a beautifully evolving and growing one as he represents what we need in our generation and generations to come, of a bridge to bring together all the pieces of the human condition, of inclusion, of walking a common path. An inspiration to me and millions of people around the world, he embodies the uprooted, who have been able to grow honest, solid, and strong roots in more places than just a single one, showing us how humans can and should thrive by calling their hearts their home in a leading nation that should and could give others hope. Mr. Blanco has received so many prestigious awards that I just won't quote them all. It is with much admiration and humble appreciation that I, on behalf of the Inter-American Dialogue, it is such an honor, Michael, thank you, present him with the Distinguished Leadership Award for outstanding cultural contributions, for his powerful use of words, helping people reflect on what unites us all, celebrating diversity under one same sun in a shared world.
Thank you, Patty. That was absolutely beautiful. Now I realize why there's so much food in my poetry and why there's so much poetry in food. It's absolutely beautiful. It's a tough act to follow, actually. But thank you, Patty. Thank you, everyone. Buenas noches. Good evening. It's truly an honor, and I'm very humbled to be here in this great place, in this great honor this evening. And I guess I want to return that honor to El Diálogo. I want to return that honor to all of you. I've been crying in my seat like a baby, realizing how many beautiful, amazing people there are in this world that have truth and justice and honesty in their heart. There's a saying in Spanish, I don't know if it's just Cuban, maybe it's just Cuban because Cubans invented everything, but que dice, dime con quién andas y te digo con quién eres, no? To translate, tell me with whom you walk, and I'll tell you who you are. And I'm so glad to be walking with all of you today, because it gives me hope that there is something wonderful in the world happening. The idea of dialogue is very important to me because I do believe that poetry itself is dialogue in many ways. It's a dialogue with the self, primarily at first, and then it's a dialogue with the world. It's a dialogue that fosters empathy and strengthens the bonds of our shared humanity by putting real names and real faces and real lives to social political issues that can get very abstracted very quickly. It's a dialogue that asks very important and often challenging and difficult questions. For me, the dialogue that happens in my poetry, the heart of my poetry, the question at the core of my poetry somehow always has to do with the idea of home and all those facets of home. Home and all that big word calls into mind in terms of family, community, cultural identity, heritage, nationality, all the rest, and on and so forth and so on. As a Cuban American and as a gay man as well, the question of home is, of course, very complicated. It's a question that ends up in some kind of reconciliation over and over again. A reconciliation of my two identities, of my two countries, and the Cubans on both sides of the Florida Straits, in order to, what I always say, is to lift the emotional embargo, which is really the only way to lift the economic embargo, through that kind of dialogue as well. It's essentially the message I tried to impart when I was honored to write and read a poem for the reopening of the U.S. Embassy in Havana, Cuba. So if you'll indulge me, I'd like to read that poem for you to bring us back to that space, which is ultimately about, again, bridging people through dialogue, through love, through understanding. Matters of the sea, cosas del mar. The sea doesn't matter. What matters is this. We all belong to the sea between us, all of us, once and still the same child who marvels over starfish, listens to hollow shells, sculpts dreams into impossible castles. We've all been lovers, holding hands, strolling either of our shores, Our footprints, like a mirage of selves, vanished in waves that don't know their birth or care on which country they break. They break. Bless us and return to the sea, home to all our silent wishes. No one is the other to the sea. Whether on hemmed island or vast continent, remember our grandfathers, their hands dug deep in red or brown earth, planting maple or mango trees that outlived them. Our grandmothers counting years while dusting photos of their weddings, brittle family faces still alive on our dressers now. Our mothers teaching us how to read in Spanish or English, how to tie our shoes, how to gather false colors or bite into a guava. Our fathers, worn by the weight of clouds, clocking in at factories or cutting sugarcane to earn a new life for us, my cousins and me. Now scouting the same scars above skyscrapers or palms, waiting for time to stop and begin again. When rain falls, washes its way through river or street back to the sea. No matter what anthem we sing, we've all walked barefoot and bare-souled. Among the soar and dive of seagull cries, we've offered our sorrows and hopes up to the sea, our lips anointed by the same spray of salt-laden wind. We've fingered our memories like regrets, like stones in our hands that we just can't toss. Yet, we've all cupped seashells to our ears. Listen again to the echo. Today, the sea still telling us the end to our doubts and fears is to gaze into the lucid blues of our shared horizon, to breathe together, to heal together. Thank you. Thanks. So the idea of home, again, that I keep on circling back to in all its facets is especially important and especially complex today as we find ourselves with so much migration, immigration, displacement, asylum, all these sorts of movements of peoples. But also, I think, because we find ourselves between two opposing worldviews, perhaps, at least in my lifetime, like I've never seen before, right? One being the view that we all need to come together as one people in order to ensure our mutual prosperity and even more so, our mutual survival, right? And then there is, against that view, the other tribal view, the us against them mentality, the isolationism, the divide and conquer mentality, right? And this context, it's in that context that this poem, I wrote this poem, which I'd like to share with you. It's a persona poem written in the voice of El Rio Grande, speaking to us, to all of us, to the world, about the absurdity and the artificiality of borders, especially as I think we are really, really starting to rethink that in this global world, this post-globalization world. So it's more than just about the US-Mexico border, but it's all about the borders that are dividing us all. And I would be honored to dedicate this poem to Pati, who was speaking to me back here about the shared experience of what this poem means to us. Complaint of El Rio Grande. I was meant for all things to meet, to make the clouds pause in the mirror of my waters, to be home to fallen rain that finds its way to me, to turn eons of loveless rock into lovesick pebbles and carry them as humble gifts back to the sea that brings life back to me. I felt the sun flare, praised each star, flocked above the moon long before you did. I breathed air you'll never breathe. Listen to songbirds before you could speak their names, before you dug your oars into me, before you created the gods that created you. Then countries, your invention. Maps jigsawing the world into colors, shapes caged in bold lines to say, you're here, not there, you're this, not that, to say yellow isn't red, red isn't black, black isn't white, to say mine, not ours, to say war, and believe that life's worth is relative. You named me, Big River, drew me blue, thick to divide, to say spick and Yankee, to say wetback and gringo. You split me in two, half of me us, the rest them. But I wasn't meant to drown children. Hear mothers' cries. Never meant to be your geography. A line, a border, a murderer. I was meant for all things to meet. The mirrored clouds and sun's tingle, bird songs and the quiet moon, the wind and its dust, the rush of mountain rain, and us. Blood that runs in you is water flowing in me. Both life, the truth we know, to be one in one another. Thank you. So, I want to close with this poem. Thank you very much. I also love, I'm going off script, which is not, again, atypical for a Cuban, but to say how beautiful it feels to share poetry with all of you, because this is where poetry should live. And in the context of Latin America, in the context of what we're talking about, to have poetry be part of our folklore and part of our dialogue and part of our conversation, not the only piece of it, but to add to it. So I thank you for that opportunity on behalf of all poets, to be able to have that voice and share that voice with you. So I'd like to close with this poem, which is sort of a departure for it sort of asks us to look at the clouds, both literally and figuratively, as a way of relinquishing the question of home, which is also a real sort of challenge that we have in our day, right? How do we, in the 21st century, honor and respect our diversity and our cultures, and yet realize there's this movement towards ultimately an organic narrative that's being written despite the knee-jerk reaction of the other narrative, right? That we're all supposed to be one people, right? Again, for our own mutual survival and prosperity. So it's another way of looking at home and of thinking of home as something boundless and shared, something almost dreamlike. And with that, I'll close, and thank you again for this incredible recognition and for your incredible company and for your incredible inspiration. Cloud Anthem. Until we are clouds that tear like bread but mend like bones. Until we weave each other like silk sheets shrouding mountains or bare gales that cheer us. Until we soften our edges, free to become any shape imaginable. Until we scatter ourselves, but then band together like stringed pearls. Until we learn to listen to each other as thunderous as opera or as soft as a showered lullaby. Until we have the courage to vanish like sails into the horizon or be at peace, anchored still. Until we move without any measure, as vast as continents or as petite as islands, until we realize we're as muddy as puddles, pristine as lakes, not yet clouds, until we remember we're born from rivers and we're born from dewdrops, until we're at ease to dissolve into wispy showers, not always to needing to be the clash of godly thunder, though we collude like storms that ravage. We can sprinkle ourselves like memories Though when we curse with hail, we can absolve with snowflakes. We can be and die valiant as rainbows and hold light in our lucid bodies like blood. We can decide to move boundlessly without creed or desire until we are clouds, meshed within clouds, sharing a kingdom with no king, a city with no walls, a country with no name, a nation without any borders or claim, until we abide as one, together in one undivided sky. Thank you. Gracias. Gracias.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you, Mr. Blanco, for those moving, inspiring words. I hope those poems resonate across the city for the next weeks, days and weeks. Anyway, we're getting close to the end of our beautiful evening. Have you had a good time so far? They say the best is yet to come. It's time for us to thank our honorees, our special guests for joining us tonight, our friends, and obviously on behalf of the Inter-American Inter-American Dialogue. Ambassador Barco is the one who consults at the Inter-American Bank. I'm sorry. On behalf of the Inter-American Dialogue, we would like to thank all of you for being here and sharing this wonderful night to celebrate the leadership for the Americas. Let's end the evening on a sweet note. So I would like to invite you to proceed to the atrium, enjoy dessert, enjoy champagne, the music of Benny Varela. He's from Colombia as well. And obviously, I invite you to have a great time, to enjoy yourself and to celebrate diversity and celebrate yourselves. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.